Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Continuous Testing Meetup online, our first edition of September. We have a great talk today, but we also have some special and additional things to share with you. Let's get started. We always like to remind you that you can check all the previous meetups, the upcoming events at continuoustestingmeetup.com. For example, you can check if you missed the previous meetup from Thomas about contract testing. You can check on the website the recording. You can see all the details, and you can always see the upcoming events by clicking on the links and logging into the different meetup groups we have. Today, we have Oksana back from her short vacation. She will share with us some interesting topics about performance testing. And with further ado, let me give you control of the screen, Oksana, so you can share that with us.
Hi, everyone. So just a second. Okay. So my name is Oksana. As you probably know, so last few times I did a short 5-minute vocabulary, and today Sofia will speak about performance testing, and I thought it would be a good idea to bring some definitions of performance efficiency and which types of performance testing exist. So as you know, if you're looking for some definition, for sure you can find a different definition, different explanation. So I'm always trying to use definitions from ISTQB glossary. So ISTQB is an international software testing qualification board. And to performance testing, as you know, so you see certificates that you can get in ISTQB, and also if you work as a performance tester or you want to get a certificate as a performance tester, there is also an extension so you can do it. But let's start. If you speak about performance and performance efficiency, we always need to know that it is one from 8 quality characteristics defined in ISO 25010. So there is 8 characteristics from functional suitability, performance efficiency, usability, etc. Probably in the next times we will discuss each of them. But in performance efficiency, there is 3 sub-characteristics like time behavior, resource utilization, and capacity. So this structure, see ISO 25010. So let's check what is it. So performance efficiency, this characteristic represents the performance relative to the amount of resources used under state conditions. These 3 sub-characteristics are time behavior, resource utilization, and capacity. So time behavior, it is degree to which the response and processing time and throughput rates of a product of a system meet requirement. The next characteristic is resource utilization. It is degree to which the amount and type of resources used by product or a system meet requirements. And the last one, sub-characteristic, is capacity. It is degree to which the maximum limit of a product or system parameter meet requirement. So the next point I want to look today, but only 3 of them, not all, because we will run out of the time. It's types of performance testing. So according to ISTQB, there are 7 types of performance testing. And if we speak about performance testing, it is an umbrella term for any kinds of testing focuses on performance of a system or component under different volumes of load. So let's check the first one, the first definition. It is load testing. So load testing focuses on the ability of a system to handle increasing level of anticipated realistic loads. And so we can understand load testing probably, as you know, as a system under load, so with a minimal load or with more users and more transactions. The next type of performance testing, according to ISTQB, it is stress testing. So in this case, stress testing focuses on the ability of a system or component to handle peak loads. They are at or beyond the limits of its anticipated or specified workloads. So in this case, we see stress test as a reaction to overload, but also as a reaction, as a possibility to recovery after return to normal work. And the last definition that I want to discuss with you today, or to show you today, it is scalability testing. So this type of testing focuses on the ability of a system to meet future efficiency requirements, which may be beyond those currently required. So the main goal of this type of performance testing is to determine the system's ability to grow. So today we discuss some points for you today. So we discuss the different types. The performance efficiency, it is one of 8 quality characteristics from ISO 25010. And we look 3 types of performance testing: load testing, stress testing, and scalability testing. So next time I would like to present you the next 4 types of performance testing. And if you have any definitions that you want to discuss here, just feel free to write in chat in our testing meetup. Thank you.
Thank you, Xana. That was very illustrative and very interesting as a preamble for today's presentation. So I assume you can see my screen again, the 5-minute vocabulary with Xana. Can someone give me a hands up? Like, okay, cool, thank you. So before moving on, a shameless plug. I don't do presentations in this meetup normally, but I was invited to do a presentation about Selenium 4. As perhaps some of you know, I'm a Selenium committer. I work actively with the Selenium project. So if you feel like joining this meetup in 1 week, September 10, it will be at 7 in the evening, Berlin time, this time zone. Please feel free to go to the Chicago Seleniumistas meetup group, and I will be there giving a talk about what is coming in Selenium 4. We want to thank the sponsors of this meetup, Sourcelabs and Trendic. Doing a meetup is not just creating an event in the meetup website. It's also about promoting, finding the speakers, doing some logistics in the background, sending some gifts to the speakers after doing their talk. So there is a lot of people involved in the background of this meetup. So we want to thank them, and we want to thank Sourcelabs and Trendic for making all this possible. Today we have a really exciting and interesting talk. Sofia will talk about performance testing in the mobile scope. I didn't know Sofia before we got to talk about this potential talk. I checked, and she has an impressive background and in testing and the experience she has. She's the founder of, co-founder and CEO of Apptim. And I hope that you find the concepts she's going to share and the ideas quite interesting and helpful for your own work in your daily tasks. So without further ado, like Sofia, thank you for being here, and the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Diego, for having me, and thanks, Oksana, for that introduction. I'm actually going to mention a few of those types of performance tests that you can run. So I'm going to share my screen. I think that's correct. Can you see it? Yeah. Okay, great. And yeah, and thanks everyone for joining us today. I know this is a special times that usually this meetup is on site and we can see each other face to face. But on the other hand, I'm on the other side of the world. Right now I'm in South America. So I'm happy that we can be connected through this medium right now. So I'm gonna jump directly into the topic today. I'm really passionate about performance testing, specifically mobile performance testing is something that I've been focusing in these past years through my work at Apptim and my previous company. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today and how through performance testing we can actually improve and enhance the mobile user experience. So before we get started, actually I'm going to share a bit about myself. So I'm originally from Uruguay. Uruguay, it's a small country in South America. I was born in Montevideo, which is the capital city. And I started my professional career in the software testing field, specifically in performance testing and mostly load testing. That has been my practical experience. I'm gonna cover that briefly today. I'm a computer engineer, and besides being the co-founder and CEO of Apptim, I'm also a director at Abstracta, which is a software consulting business that has more than 11 years of trajectory in the field. And with Abstracta, actually, I moved to San Francisco, California 3 years ago, and lived there for some time. And also, when I'm not working in my startup, I like doing kitesurfing. I'm vegan, so I cook a lot of plant-based food. And I also enjoy and I'm really interested in supporting projects that promote more participation of women in IT. So I'm happy we have some women joining us today. So today I'm going to talk about how mobile performance impacts the user experience. And I'm going to introduce different types of performance tests that we can think about and how to implement them in an agile environment. I'm also going to briefly mention some of the problems that we can identify according to the different factors that affect the performance of an app. And I'll dig a little bit deeper on how to incorporate client-side performance tests earlier. And I'm going to talk about why it is client-side performance as well. I'll show you, and I share with you some tools, most of them open source, that you can use to test performance. And I'll do a brief demo of the first tool that we actually developed at our startup. This is a free tool, so I'm going to show it to you. And if you're interested, I think it's the first and the easiest way for you guys to start like thinking about client-side performance. Right now, we want to get feedback from users. That's all we care about. So it's free. You can download it from our website, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the end of the talk. So if you have questions during the presentations, just write them down on the chat, and we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. Okay. So let's get started. So why is mobile performance relevant today? The performance of a mobile app is one of the quality factors that is directly related to the user experience. So I'm sure you have all experienced at least once that an app or your phone, it's either slow, it takes too much time to start, it freezes on a screen or stops responding. You restart it several times, you get error messages until you just get tired and you close it. And it's really frustrating, right? On the other hand, we have these other apps that since the first day that we installed them, they work extremely well, to the point that we were surprised by how well they perform. So what makes these applications work so well compared to the others? And that's what I'm gonna talk about. And the truth is that in today's world, digital transformation and the digital performance specifically has a huge impact on the success of a business. So consumers like us today, we expect digital experiences to exceed the face-to-face experience. And there are a lot of research and there's a lot of research and reports that have been released in these past years. There's one specifically from AppDynamics that I look a lot, that's called the App Attention Index. And basically the report from 2017 shows that 60% of users have either deleted an app or abandon a website after just the first attempt to use it, if they found any performance problem. And actually up to 80% will eventually delete an app if those problems continue. So this abandonment rate impacts the digital transformation that many companies are going. And it's something that we have to bear in mind when we are developing and testing our apps. The same report, but from last year, actually shows that 70% of customers claim to be less tolerant of problems with their digital services than 2 years ago. So these unforgiving customers can actually destroy, our brand. When they encounter unacceptable digital experiences, they will first switch suppliers, and they can also discourage other users from using our apps. So this can really affect our brand. But on the other hand, for those companies that actually get it right, the ones that consistently deliver world-class experiences, the opportunity to drive customer loyalty and grow revenue through the digital services is unlimited. So I'll think that the winners will be those that consistently deliver and operate above this level. So there's a huge opportunity for companies that are developing their customer acquisition through digital services and specifically mobile apps to drive loyalty if they actually provide the best experience to their users. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How we can, through performance testing, identify improvements and how we can optimize that experience for the user. So performance of, specifically performance of an app, if we think about both a mobile or a web app, is a product of different factors. What are those factors? Could be the servers, so the backend systems of our apps, the network where it's connected to, the mobile device itself when the app runs, and the programming of the application as well. So as app developers or testers, we can measure the performance of a mobile application under different scenarios. We can think about high user concurrency. We can test our app on different models of mobile devices, which all vary in hardware and screen sizes. And we can also test our app on different types of networks, such as 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, and more. And the truth is that there are many variables that affect the performance of a mobile application. And a user can have a really bad experience, and the cause can be completely outside of the implementation or the code of the app itself. So that's why I'm going to talk about the different types of performance tests that we can design and run for each of these factors, and what type of problems we can identify and optimizations. So I'm gonna get started with actually what performance testing typically, when we think about performance testing, we typically think about, the backend, stressing the systems, doing load tests. And that's exactly what Oksana was mentioning. There are different types of tests. There's load, stress, endurance, and others. In general, the goal of this type of tests is to understand the behavior of our application under a certain number of concurrent users and see how the components on the backend behave and how well they can manage bigger loads. So the type of problems that we can identify with these tests is, for example, high response times from the servers. We can identify bottlenecks or breaking points in application servers and also database resources. And we can also identify things like bad implementations of scaling policies. So let's say we have our app hosted on servers in Amazon, and we can configure what's our auto scaling policies when we have higher loads. Many times that's not properly configured, and then we are actually spending thousands of dollars on things that we're not really using in terms of resources. So these are things that we can identify when we test the backend and we test with load and concurrency. So what happens when we think about the network? So the network specifically, we can think about two characteristics of a network that can affect the performance of an app, which are the latency and the bandwidth, okay? So what's the latency? It's the time that takes to send information through the network, and it's typically measured in milliseconds. And on the other hand, the bandwidth is the maximum capacity in terms of amount of data that can be transferred through the network. And it's typically also measured in bits per second or multiples. So the lower the latency is and the higher the bandwidth is, the better the network for the user experience. So the performance of an app can vary if a phone is connected to a 3G or a 4G network. And although this is something that it's out of our control, in a way, we don't know how good the network our users will be connected to actually is, we can incorporate in our load test simulation of different networks and see what the impact on response times from the server side is. And additionally, we can also test the network from the client side. Using real devices, we can actually vary the network that each device is connected to. And we can see how it affects also the response times from the client side. And with this, I'm gonna go to the third factor, which is the client side, which conforms the device and the app itself. So why testing a mobile app performance on the client side, right? And I already mentioned that the app performance is directly related to the user experience. And I think this is a critical aspect that every mobile app team has to integrate to their test cycle. Particularly if we talk about performance tests on the client side, on the app itself, it would help us identify how it behaves in the mobile device, how it uses the resources shared with other apps that are also running on the device, and identify opportunities to improve it. And just to give you an example also of the challenges that when we think about mobile apps and performance, as testers we face on, for example, native apps such as Android. So here you can see in the last 7 years, all the different versions of Android O operating system that have been released to the market that actually shows that there's a huge fragmentation, meaning today there are way more versions of Android operating system being used in the market. If you see 7 years ago, so 2013, in order to get 70% coverage of the Android market, let's say I want to test my app on at least 70% of the OSs that are being used in the market, I only needed three OSs. And if we go all the way to last year, we can see that this fragmentation today means that in order to have that coverage, so in order to be able to test in at least 70% of all the OSs being used in the market, we need to have at least 7 different OSs under growing all the way from Lollipop 5.0 to Pi 9, and today we even have Android 10 as well. So this means that each year that passes, the amount of testing actually grows, because we have to make sure that our app works in the older versions of Android and also in the newest ones, and we have to cover the whole range of devices. So this is also why performance on the client side requires us to test on real devices with different OSs, and also, of course, screen sizes that might affect how our app is shown. Okay, so now that we know, or at least I'll try to explain why we should care about client-side performance in mobile, what type of metrics can we measure, and what are the type of problems that we can identify? So I divided it in several groups, and this is mostly focused for mobile native apps. Then I'm going to mention some tools for web in mobile, so web mobile apps, meaning you have a web application that you're accessing through a browser and mobile. There are other tools specifically for that I'm going to mention later. But right now, if we think about a native app, either Android or iOS, what should we measure, or what should we be looking at when we think about the client-side performance? So first we have everything related to the device resources usage. So we think the device is a computer, actually a very powerful computer right now. We have things like CPU, so how much CPU is using while our app is running, how much memory is using. And it will actually help us identify things like memory leaks in our app, which means that our app is not properly releasing memory during a certain period of time. The memory usage will grow to a point that there's no more memory left in the device and our app will crash. And that's also something very common that we could identify if we are measuring this on the device. Also, we can measure how much data is being sent and received from the app through the network. And that also has a huge impact on the CPU usage. And the same with the battery usage. We don't want to drain our users' phone because our app is very like resource intense. Then we have everything related to rendering, so how we are drawing the screens on the device. So here we can measure things like rendering times, frames per second. That's also very common when we're thinking about games. And to give you an idea, in order to achieve a fluid rendering, which is around 60 frames per second, each of the frames that we draw needs to be completed in less than 16 milliseconds. And what happens if this is not the case? Basically, the application will create a disruption in animation and it will freeze. So this is something that if we measure, we can actually prevent even from the user experiencing lags in the drawing times, or even if we are like excessively drawing, we are using a lot of CPU, and that's really not the best approach because we're going to drain the battery. So we need to understand how our app is rendering and see what opportunities of improvement are that at the end of the day will actually increase the user experience. And then we have errors. In general, it could be exceptions that happen on the app, any crash that the app experiences. Usually we have to look at the logs and see what happened. And then specifically for Android, there are ANRs, which is application not responding. And that happens, and probably happened to many of you, when you are using an app and you see there's a message shown in the screen with the option wait or close the app. And this is generally due to the fact that certain events may not execute on a specific period of time. So I did a click or I did a touch screen, and after 5 seconds, nothing happened. And then automatically the Android app will show me this message. So these are things that we can capture when we are looking at the client side. And then last but not least, we have response times. Response times, when you measure them from the user experience, you have to take it into consideration that it will include the different parts that play on making the transaction completed. So for instance, if we measure the response time of specific action, let's say I'm doing a login and I want to know how long the login takes in my app, I can't measure that from the client side. But then if I want to see how can I optimize it, how can I improve that response time, I'm going to look at what's the server response time, that we can use a proxy for that. I'm going to see if there's a database in the middle, what's the SQL time. There might be some network latency as well included in that transaction time. And of course, the rendering times as well. So usually we can measure that and see how we are doing with each event or action or transaction that we care about. And then when we want to optimize, we'll have to look to the other factors as well that play a big role on that transaction time. And also very important for developers is the app startup time. And this is how much time does it take for your app to actually open and load the first time. So when you click on the app and it opens and it's available for the user to start interacting with it, that's the app startup time. Why is it important? Because that's basically one of the first steps that the user needs to take to use your app. And if we go to like what's the industry standard for this time, I would say 3, 4, 5 years ago, 3 seconds was kind of the generally accepted time for an app to start. And with the years, this is getting even more lower. So the lower, of course, your startup time is, the better. And there are a lot of industry studies about what's good for the user, what's acceptable for the user, and who's gonna, you know, uninstall your app if it just takes too much time to load every time that you want to use it. Okay, so these are some of the metrics that that you can start measuring. And then the other question is, when should we start testing performance? Because I'm pretty sure you might already test performance of the backend. You might focus more on the functional part and automate your functional test. And at some point, you're going to start thinking about, okay, where should I start testing this? And my recommendation is actually as soon as possible. And you can actually start testing as early or as soon as you have your first package version of your app. That's how soon you can, even before releasing the first version to the market. And there are many reasons why I think you should start thinking about this as soon as possible. First is like, it will help you and if you're the tester or developer, understand how the app behaves under the hood. So we develop something and then we see what are the results. We can test on different devices as well and see what are the differences. And most importantly, I think we can familiarize ourselves with these metrics, which is something that we might not be used to. It might be the first time that we even think about this. So I think it takes some time to start like seeing trends and understanding, even like if we see over time how some of these metrics change, we can identify a performance regression. So maybe we have a change in the app, and that actually we can sooner identify, what was that change, how it impacted certain metric, let's say, memory, and we can actually find a memory leak even before it's released to our users. And that's, I think, the main goal of starting early and shifting left testing, and as soon as possible identifying issues and being able to fix them. So that's why I will suggest to think about performance testing earlier on, and actually thinking about like the agile way of developing that I'm pretty sure we are all either following some type of agile framework. I wanted to share with you actually a talk that I gave some years ago with a colleague in the US, where we were discussing about the pros and cons of doing performance testing along with development versus at the end of it. And in that talk, we actually presented what would be the agile approach as performance testing along with development, which means that you can start getting early feedback on the performance of certain components or certain pieces of your application, even before you have the production ready version of it. And the most common one, which is actually the one that's usually thought around performance testing, is doing a load test before you go live. And at the time, we called that the waterfall approach. So we wait until the end. Once we have our production version ready, then we do a load test in the acceptance phase, and then we see what we can improve. And the truth, and we talk about this at the end of that talk, is that there's no approach that is better than the other, but we actually need both in different stages of the development cycle. So we should start early doing performance engineering, and we also will need to simulate load for acceptance testing at the end of our current cycle. So both are complementary, but they have different approaches to it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and specifically performance engineering, because this is where I think the agile methodology also aligns the most. And I'll talk about a different tests that we can run according to the main factors that affect performance. And here I listed tests that you can run both on the server side and on the client side. And I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with the proposal from Mike Hahn, the famous pyramid, that it shows how we should invest our time in automation. So we can actually translate this pyramid from the functional automation to performance testing. So if we think about how each of these parts of the pyramid will translate in terms of what type of performance tests we can run, I will conclude that we can have, first, we can have many unit tests for performance testing. We can have like automatic response times or automatic response checks. There could be this type of test can be executed really easily in a CI, in a continuous integration tool, many times per day, and they can be easy to maintain and fast to execute. So I think these are the ones that will give us the best ROI. Then if we go one level up in the pyramid, we have API tests. So we can have API tests executing against our code or against our services, and we can consider some concurrency there. So let's say I have 3 APIs that my app uses. I can think about running 50 concurrent users for each API and check how the response time are. So these tests are also easier to maintain, and they're quicker to run than the typical load test. And then if we go one step up to the top of the pyramid, we also have, and I think we need to have, GUI automated tests. And when thinking about performance, this type of tests we translate them to HTTP protocol, that it's the one used between the server and the client. So this would be tests that you want to implement for your most critical workflows. They are more difficult to maintain, but on the other hand, these are the type of tests that will give us most information end to end. So we still need to have some, HTTP tests running our critical flows and understanding what's the response times that we get for each step that the user has to follow. Then if we are working on like developing a mobile app, and we already have some functional tests automated, I would recommend there to think how we can add client-side performance data to those tests. So we can get early feedback on app performance. So let's say you have some Selenium, if it's web app, or Appium, if it's a native app, already scripted, and you're running them on your CI every couple of days or every couple of weeks. How can you add some performance data that you can capture, CPU usage on the device, you can capture, rendering times, and this is just already on what you have automated, and you will get feedback on the performance before you release a new version to the market. And if we want to go one step further, we can also add, as I mentioned previously, network simulation. So there are many tools today in the market that allow you to choose which devices you want to run your test on, and on each device you can configure, what network you want that device to be connected to. You can simulate that, so you can even configure the bandwidth and the latency of the network. So you also can make sure that your app will perform at a minimum level of acceptance on different networks. And of course, this is all according to who's your audience, like who are your users, what type of devices they're using, what type of network they're connecting, and then being able to simulate that on a test environment. And then, of course, if you have a thorough testing strategy, which generally includes exploratory testing, this is the least that we want to do, but I think this is something that we need to do. More if you're doing an agile way of development, that we have a lot of information either while the app is being developed or even after. We need to do some exploratory tests, and specifically for this and for performance is that we created the first tool that it's free, that I'm going to show, that if you're already using, or if you're already doing, quick manual tests or exploratory tests of your apps, usually you do with your own devices, you could start using our free tool for that. Okay, so this is how you can translate the famous pyramid from Mike Hunt to performance, and specifically performance engineering. So you can start early testing different components of your application and what makes more sense according to, of course, your business goals. Okay, so what tools can you use for performance testing? And I'm gonna quickly, just like quick overview of tools in the market. I'm pretty sure you've heard of most of them. So on the back end, you know, JMeter and Gatling, I think they are, you know, these all are open source tools, the three of them. JMeter and Gatling are very known and used. They have their differences, but I guess both of them are really good to get started with load testing. And also Taurus is an open source project that it's a testing framework that stands on top of these two tools and others. And you can just write your test on a YAML file, and then you can use JMeter or Gatling to execute it. And it's also focused on developers that want to easily start like testing and integrating this to a CI, and they make it really easy. So I invite you to check it out. Then if we think about web or hybrid clients, Google has Google Web Dev Tools. They have Lighthouse, which is actually the engine for many tools today that measure web performance. So I'll recommend you to check it out if you're testing a web app, so web app on mobile. It can give you tips on things that you want to optimize, like how to load JavaScript resources, cache policies, and more. And then also all the APM tools out there. So this is application performance monitoring. New Relic is just one of them. There are many, but they will also help you understand what things can be optimized from a client-side perspective of your web app or hybrid app, which is usually web inside a native app. And then for native apps, there are profiling tools which are native to each platform. So for Android Studio, you have Android Studio, where you can profile your app and see, you know, how CPU memory is. And for iOS, you have Instruments that it's part of Xcode. And I think these are great tools to help you debug an app, look for the root cause of performance issues, and they're usually already installed in the environment, in the IDEs that we are using for development. And of course, there's Apptim, which is one of the tools that we developed last year. It's Apptim Desktop, is our first one. And we actually want to make really easy for anyone in the team, not only the developers, that they can actually profile an app and they can understand how the app behaves without, you know, the need to have technical knowledge, without the need to have expertise, that these debugging tools may have a high learning curve. So we try to make it really easy for anyone in the team that has access to the app. They can start testing for performance early on, understanding metrics, seeing how their app behaves, and just making it, you know, available for anyone to incorporate this performance testing in their current cycles. Okay, so I'm going to do a very quick demo because we have some minutes left, and I want to leave some time for questions. Just to quickly show you, I'm going to do like that, how to use. This is a free tool again, so please feel free to go to our website after and download it if you're interested. So this is a Mac app that we have. We also have one for Windows. And basically, I'm going to just run a quick test on an app and show you what reports you get by using Apptim. And I'm going to actually record my phone screen so you can see the test that I'll be running. So I'm connecting to an iPhone, and I'm going to put it here. There you go. So I'm just going to start a test. Again, this is an exploratory test that I'm going to do. I actually have also an Android device connected. I'm going to choose my iPhone. And I'm gonna choose the app that I'm gonna test. In this case, it's a demo app that we built at Apptim. I'm just gonna start a quick exploratory test, which I named it like demo. And basically, we'll connect to the device. I'll start testing. The app is gonna be launched by Apptim. During the test, I can report bugs that I find, and I wanna give details. Those bugs then can be reported to Jira as well automatically. I can take notes, anything as a tester that I want to do, I can do it while the test is running. So I'm just going to do a quick flow. I'm going to click on the phone category. I'm going to choose an iPhone that I want to buy. I'm going to click on add to cart and then add 3. Okay. And it's just gonna see my cards, view card, and then I have the 3 there. I'm not gonna report any bug because I wanna do it pretty fast, and then I'm just gonna click on end session. What's happening now is that, so we are gathering all the data on what happened under the hood. And this means all the performance data, crashes, exceptions, anything that happened that maybe as a tester I didn't even know that was happening. Apptim will capture that for me. It will generate a report, and I'm going to show it quickly here because we don't have a lot of time left. That basically this report shows me, okay, what's your CPU, average CPU usage, memory, power, all the data that was being sent and download. It shows me some warnings of things that I should look at. In this case, the app was using a lot of memory. So I can actually get to see and replay the test. And then I get all the information from each of the areas that we analyze. So CPU, you get a graph during the whole test, how it behaved. The same for memory. We saw there was a peak, so we can see when it happened. We also get information on the environment where we tested. So the device, the model, any errors, if there were exceptions, we'll capture them, bug reports as well, and then of course all the logs from the device. So if you're the developer or even the tester and you want to understand specifically why one of these metrics wasn't behaving as you expect to, then you can actually download the log from the device and understand what is going on. So that's how easy it is. Then you have the report, you can access it locally, you can publish it to the cloud, and that's how I think it's the best way to get started with performance testing on the client side. And again, this is something that you can start using with your own devices for free. Okay, so we still have 10 minutes for questions. I'm gonna go to the chat to see if I can get.
Sure, I can do that for you if you want to.
Okay, great.
First of all, truly thank you, because I personally like this type of presentations where the concept is shown and then the tool. Many vendors just want to show the tool without understanding what is going on behind. So that was great for me, at least. We have 2 questions. Both of them are from Stefan. So I'm going to ask, Stefan, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question, or should I read it for you?
Oh, hi, Stefan here. I'm able to read it myself. So first I was wondering how the setup would look like if I have to test over the network, over the real network, instead of simulating latency and bandwidth. But I got that this is not the goal of this tool. So, but
yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I can answer the first question.
Okay.
So there are a lot of cloud testing services that they allow you to rent a real device in the cloud that is located somewhere in the world. So you can choose if you want a real device located in one specific country and to test the network there, you can do that. I would suggest to think first, what do you want to focus your efforts with that test? Because if it's something that you want to see on the back end, on the server side, you might need actually to generate the load to hit your servers, and then you can add some latency or change a little bit the network conditions, and that would be enough, and you will save a lot of money. But then on the other hand, if you really need the real devices in the actual place where you want to test that or connected to real networks, you can do that. It's just more expensive.
Yeah, I see. It was a really early question, so thanks for this. And the other was, how do you test your particular app under test? And ignoring all what happened in the background, like following emails or so. This would most likely irritate the results.
So let me see if I understand. So while you're testing the app, of course, there are other services and activities and even apps that are running in the background. How we separate everything that's not the current app and show the results? That's your question?
Yeah. exactly?
Yeah, so we filter. You can filter from, we identify the process that your app is running, and we only capture information about that specific process.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the presentation.
Great. There is, well, Antonella is asking if you can go back to the dashboard of Apptim, sorry. She wants to make a screenshot.
It's similar like Appium.
Yeah.
We didn't do it on purpose.
What a
So you
coincidence.
want to go, you want to go back to the dashboard? Yes, I think if I
Yeah,
do
she wants to
this
see the dashboard,
here.
so
Okay.
she wants to make a screenshot.
Yeah, we recently changed this. So please let us know if you don't understand something, because we want to make sure that it like right away you can see if something is like a warning and don't like lose yourself on reviewing each specific section. So we did a new redesign of the dashboard recently. Okay.
Great. Thank you. So I think someone wants to ask. So Mahesh, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Sure. Firstly, thank you. It was a great presentation. Wanted to know, how do you manage data for performance testing? As you know, performance testing is a data guzzling activity. So how do you manage performance testing data? How do you build the data that is required, the volume that is required to carry out performance testing?
Okay, I think that's the case when you're testing mostly the back end. So when you need to generate a lot of data to use, either like concurrent users, it's something that you need to think about. Our focus today for our tool is on the client side. So you don't actually need as much data as if you will running a test under concurrency. I still can answer your question. Of course, there are other tools, even the ones I mentioned for like performance testing, like JMeter or Gatling. And usually, what you have is a CSV file where you just input the different data that each like virtual user will be using during the test. So you want to make sure that it can actually replicate, as much as possible the real world. So let's say you're testing a banking application, you have different accounts, different credit card numbers, and all that data you put it on a CSV file, and that data pool is actually used by the tool that runs the test. So you could do that with JMeter or Gatling, for example.
Thank you. And do you run performance tests in isolated environments?
So yeah, usually we use specific mobile devices. So the solution that I should show is using your own mobile device. We have one that runs in the cloud, so you can choose clean devices where you can install your app and run specific tests there. And I actually recommend that if you want to do like continuous performance testing, that you can actually control the environment, so your data is not that variable. So you can actually identify trends on the different metrics, but that would be the kind of the cloud solution. So you can choose the devices and have them dedicated in a pre-prod type of environment.
Great. I think there are a couple of more questions, but I think I can put them together in one because they're kind of related, and then we can wrap up the Q&A. So there is a question asking from Walex, and also Stefan is slightly related. So they want to know how Apptim works, if it's an SDK or if it's a proxy somewhere, because Stefan wants to know if there is like a client app that has to be installed in the phone from Apptim, and what operating system versions are supported.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we don't use an SDK. You don't need to change anything on the app or on the phone. We do instrumentation of the app through ADB in Android, and we use iLib device for iOS. But basically, what you need to install is our application, which is a desktop app, on your Mac or Windows, and we will automatically install all the dependencies that we need. And then once you connect your phone through an USB cable, we are able to access the phone and the app and gather all this data. So that's all you need to install our desktop app. And in terms of OSs and versions, so I said we have one for Mac and one for Windows. The Mac version supports both Android and iOS apps, and the Windows is for Android apps. And then, yeah, contact details. So this is the last one. So yeah, this is my details. You can find me on Twitter as SO Palamarchuk, which is my surname. That's my email from Apptim. Feel free to reach out. And also I encourage you, if you're like entering the performance world, I wrote a lot about performance testing in our blog at abstracta.us/blog performance testing. You can find a lot of content, not just me, but like we have a lot of guests. And also at Apptim blog, we just started it a couple of months ago. But we talk a lot about performance and like how you can integrate this to your CI and other things that you can do with this tool. So feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or email if you have any questions.
Thank you. I think so. We will. Sofia, you will join us in the Slack workspace for CTM, and therefore. Yeah, like if you have more questions and if you want to reach out to Sofia, she's going to be there soon. So we can continue the conversation there. So again, thank you very much. And to respect everyone's time, I will just move to the closing of the meetup quite soon. Next, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have Nikolai talking about automated testing with JavaScript. So please have a look, and if you want to join us as well, please have in mind that the meetup will be 2 hours later than the regular time, so it won't be at 5 in the afternoon Berlin time. It will be at 7 in the evening Berlin time. So just please do the math for your time zone. And yeah, that's it for today. Again, thank you, Sofia. Thank you, Oksana, for your talks. It was really great to see how performance testing is a topic that is being shared across the community. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.